Terence Crawford has more KO power than Errol Spence Jr. and is the most dangerous puncher he's ever faced. It's your boy Cardinal Red Sports. Let's talk about it. Alright, so some people are reporting that Terence Crawford has more KO power than Errol the Truth Spence Jr. And I just wanted to break down my thoughts on that. Now, is Terence Crawford the most dangerous puncher that Errol Spence has ever faced? I'm going to start with that question. I would have to say no. I think the most dangerous puncher Errol Spence has ever actually gotten into the ring with was Kell Brook. I actually think Kell Brook was the best competition that Errol Spence has faced. There were a few other fighters I think that were on the level or maybe even a notch above Kell Brook, but their careers didn't pan out exactly as maybe they thought or as good as Kell Brook's career ended up panning out. Kell Brook was an extremely formidable opponent, someone I always wanted to see Manny Pacquiao get in the ring with because I felt like Kell Brook did have dangerous punching power. The fact he was able to move up to 154 and give Gennady Golovkin a run for his money when Gennady was in his prime. He was actually beating Gennady until his eye socket got messed up. That should speak a lot about the type of fighter Kell Brook actually is. Now, I know when Kell Brook and Errol Spence finally met up, people feel like Kell Brook caught the beat down. And unfortunately for Kell Brook, I would have to say that's true. He did catch the beat down, but he caught the beat down because of the fact that he decided to try to take on someone as big and as strong as Gennady Golovkin, and he messed his eyes up in the process. And I think that ended or shortened Kell Brook's career prematurely. He really shouldn't have. He shouldn't have had to go out like that. But like many fighters, he decided to go out on his own shield, as people in the UK like to say. He went out on his own shield. He made his own choice to go about the end of his career in that way. And Kell Brook ran into a buzzsaw when he met up with Errol Spence Jr. Now, I think the most dangerous puncher Errol Spence would have ever faced off with would have been Manny Pacquiao if that fight would have actually came to fruition. But we all know that there were circumstances keeping Errol Spence from getting in the ring with Pacquiao. Believe what you must. I have my beliefs. Other people have their beliefs. We'll leave it there. But that fight never did happen. So I think the actual real biggest puncher that Errol Spence would have ever gotten in the ring with, the fight just never happened. Now, when you compare Terence Crawford to those other two guys, to Kell Brook and to Manny Pacquiao, where does he stack up on that resume? Where does he land in that ranking system? Would he be 1, 2, or 3 if you lined him up with those three guys as far as punching power? Well, when you ask me about Terence Crawford and punching power, you got to go back and look at his history. A lot of people feel like because he knocked out supposedly all of his welterweight opponents, that he is the biggest puncher, the baddest puncher that Errol Spence would have ever faced off with. And I beg to differ, especially when it comes to that Shawn Porter fight. Shawn Porter was not a knockout for Terence Crawford, nowhere near. It was I feel like a mutual agreement, for lack of a better word, between both of those guys. And Terence Crawford just got the nod in that fight because of the friendship. And it had nothing to do with Terence Crawford's punching power. It had nothing to do with Terence Crawford's skill sets. And if you base it off of that last fight, you would have to say Terence Crawford really has mediocre punching power. I don't know. He knocked out Jeff Horn. They both fought Kell Brook. He knocked out Kell Brook. And because he did it quicker than Errol Spence, I think a lot of people feel like he has more punching power than Errol Spence, which I just beg to differ. The Kell Brook-Terence Crawford fight, I kind of feel like was so far past Kell Brook's prime. I really wish Kell Brook wouldn't even gotten to the ring with Terence Crawford. But, you know, Kell Brook's a great fighter. He wanted to challenge himself. and he decided to take on one of the best of this generation, and him being one of the best from the last generation. And Kell Brook was so far past the prime. He had already caught the messed up eye socket from Gennady Golovkin, and then Errol Spence happened to mess up his other one, and then you throw him in there with Terence Crawford, and it just didn't go that well. But here's one funny thing about that Crawford-Kell Brook fight. If you ask me, Brook was actually in the fight up until the point he decided to take a knee and ultimately end the fight. Terence Crawford actually didn't really knock Kell Brook out. You know, the Kell Brook fight it was almost like the Shawn Porter fight. It's just Kell Brook couldn't continue because of his eyes. It had nothing to do with a major beatdown that Terence Crawford had put on Kell Brook. It was almost the opposite of that. I actually feel like Brook might have been either even with Terence Crawford at that point in the fight, or a half a point ahead of Terence Crawford until he decided to stop throwing back. He's decided to stop throwing back. His eye, I guess, was giving him so much trouble that he didn't want to risk losing the eye. And that's something that Errol Spence fans have to understand, is that when you say things like Spence didn't fight Pacquiao because he could have lost his eye, Kell Brook got in there with two basically destroyed orbital bones and caught 3 major beatdowns because of those orbital bones, and was still in all 3 of those fights. Now, nowhere along the line did anybody cry for Kell Brook or whine for Kell Brook and say that, you know, he shouldn't have been in the ring because he could have lost his eye. He's a warrior. He went in there and he did it. Now, I'm not taking anything away from Errol Spence by saying that. I'm just saying that some people have that warrior mentality when it comes to injuries, and they push through them. And some people, hey, they use their injuries as a reason not to get in the ring at all. Once again, it's not a knock on Errol Spence, but that's just saying that just because one person says something might happen in the midst of a fight doesn't mean it's actually going to happen. Kell Brook can see perfectly well, even after taking all that punishment to his eye sockets. Now, when it comes to Terence Crawford, once again, and his punching power, and who has the best punching power out of those two guys, you just have to look at the last 2 fights. The Ugas fight should say it all when it comes to punching power. Not only did Errol Spence mess the man's eyes all up, he broke his ribs, I think fractured his jawbone. That's punching power. That's KO power. Now, Ugas never went down in that fight. It's not like he knocked Ugas out. He just beat him down and broke him down so much physically, Ugas couldn't continue. That is the complete opposite of what we saw in the Shawn Porter Terence Crawford fight. Shawn Porter was frustrated, not beaten up. Shawn Porter was not boxing like himself because he wasn't in the ring for 2 years. He didn't get his body broke down by Terence Crawford. He didn't get anything broken by Terence Crawford. So I don't understand in anybody's mind how that's punching power, and you would put him over Errol Spence, who's out here breaking people's bones, literally. Y'all let me know what y'all think about that down in the comment section below. Hit that like button for me. Share, subscribe. Holler at me on all social media platforms, Facebook, Instagram, YouTube. More than likely to get a response on the tube, so holler at me over there. And we are man.
In the North Pole, shorty move your torso, let your back porch roll. Louis skis is more so when they getting more dough. Put it on my wardrobe, take a little more dro, higher than the 4th floor. Got some fans, but I'm trying to let some more know I'm the real deal. Y'all faking like the Giorno. Pretty soon see your boy at award shows. I keep a chick with a stash like hormones. I gotta get it, okay. 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 I gotta get it, 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 I gotta get it. Now break it down, okay. 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 Now to the rapper, I just show up at your stage show. Hide in the crowd, then hit your